Hey, that was a lot of talking before you even got a chance to start. This would be Thursday, May 11th, and we're going to get into the reunion scene. Let's see, tomorrow's the NWEA, so bring your charged iPad. Really, we're just doing this for Caitlin because she's the only one I think that's gone right now, right?
Zion's here.
Zion, but she'll listen to it later and she'll figure it out. It's okay, Zion. There we go. She's back alive now, so I think that's it. So just Caitlin and Zion, who apparently you want her to watch it later. Let's see. Then we have the Charger Challenge, but that's like still a week away. We just got really prepared to make sure we're good to go for that list. And then once again, Gilder, Florin, put that up there last time. That's there. All right. We're going to get into the reunion scene, which we can talk about, and I'm going to read that to you and the scene leading up to it. There is a good chance, those of you who did not just read what we read in class should be well beyond this, but that's all right. 193? There we go. I just want to jump into that part where he has the italics, where he is introducing the reunion scene, so I can go through and sort of help you out from there. This is me being William Goldman. I'm not trying to be confusing, but the above paragraph that I'm cutting into now is verbatim Morgenstern. Verbatim is a fancy word that means word for word, which means that part where Morgenstern is like arguing about himself, about trying to do things with his wife, that's not Goldman being sassy, that was just how Morgenstern wrote. He was a very strange man. Spike speaking, if you end up really liking, sorry, time out for a moment. I have Morgenstern's other book over here, because he wrote a second one. No, I mean, it's not Princess. There it is.
I'm guessing it's the Princess.
I don't have Buttercup's Baby. That was, they never translated it to English, but you'll find out more about it. It's a book called Silent Gondoliers, which was a shorter story he did.
Gondoliers of boat
It is. It's in Italy. The boat people who push little things, and they sing songs, and there's a guy who could not sing, and so this was another book he did. So it's Morgenstern's other book. It's also nearly as strange, because S. Morgenstern is just a strange man. Are you trying to remind them they're getting ready to get new seats? It's okay. They act like I can't hear what's going on the whole time. I'll be involved soon. It's okay. Verbatim Morgenstern. He was continually referring to his wife in the unabridged book, saying that she loved the next section, or she thought that all in all, the book was extraordinarily brilliant. Mrs. Morgenstern was rarely anything but supportive to her husband, unlike some wives I could mention. Sorry about that, Helen. But here's the thing. I got rid of almost all of the intrusions when he told us what she thought. I didn't think the device added a whole lot. And besides, he was always complimenting himself through her. And today, we know that hyping something too much does more harm than good, as any defeated political candidate will tell you when he pays his television bills. The thing of it is, I left this particular reference in because, for once, I totally happen to agree with Mrs. Morgenstern. I think it was unfair not to show the reunion. Sorry, I forgot to say. The reunion between who?
Wesley and Buttercup.
And because, wow, how is Wesley not dead?
Because the pirates black.
And so, who did Wesley turn out to be?
The man in black.
The man in black. And so that's when I didn't get a chance to read the scene. She pushes him down the hill and she's like, I hope you die! To which he replies, and it's so beautiful, and we all teared up and had to take a little tissue and dab our eyes. And so she goes flying down the hill, like, as you wish. And we find out that Man in Black is really Wesley, and we get the whole bonding thing. And then they have a reunion scene with all kinds of kissing and stuff like that, and that part they got cut out. Suskovich.
Oh, I just understood what I was going to ask.
I'm glad learning happened.
I was going to tell you that.
I saw him. It's okay. But don't worry, if I want to torture those kids, I just ignore them the entire time. It makes them better people. But at least he's not leaning against a wall while he's standing, so we all have our own thing. So I wrote one of my own, what I felt Buttercup and Wesley might have said. But Hiram, my editor, felt that made me just as unfair as Morgenstern here. If you're going to abridge a book in the author's own words, you can't go around sticking your own in. That was Hiram's point. And we really went round and round, arguing over, I guess, a period of a month, in person, through letters, on the phone. Finally, we compromised to this extent. This, what you're reading in the regular type is strict Morgenstern. Verbatim, fancy word meaning word for word. Cut, yes. Changed, no. But I got Hiram to agree that Harcourt would at least print up my scene. Ballantine has agreed to do the same. And now that this is back with Harcourt, they've taken it up again, too. It's all of 3 pages. Big deal. And if any of you want to see what it came out like, drop a note or a postcard to blah, 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 which I've already done. I have right here in front of me. It's actually right there. And just mention you like a reunion scene. Don't forget to include your return address. You'd be stunned at how many people send in for things. And don't put their return address down. The publishers agreed to spring for the postage costs, so your total expense is the note or card or whatever. It would really upset me if I turned out to be the only modern American writer who gave the impression that he was with a generous publishing house. They all stink. Yeah, sorry about that, Mr. Ivanovich. So let me just add here that the reason they are so generous in paying this giant postage bill is because they fully expect nobody to write in. So please, if you have the least interest at all, or even if you don't, write in for my reunion scene. You don't have to read it. I'm not asking that. But I would love to cost those publishing geniuses a few dollars. Because, let's face it, they're not spending much on advertising my books. Let me just repeat the address for you. Blah, 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 blah. And just ask for your copy of the reunion scene. This has gone longer than I planned, so I'm going to repeat the Morgenstern paragraph I interrupted. It'll read better. Over and out. Let's see. Now you can go to Princess. Did you guys go to princessbridebook.com?
No.
What?
You can go on there, and they have the reunion scene there also. You can also, oftentimes they put an email address, and you can also email for the reunion scene. If you didn't, you're in luck. I will read it to you now. And so, the reunion scene.
It's gonna be fancy.
Turns out, there's a drawback to the reunion scene. When you write in, this is what you get back. It says, "Dear reader, thank you for sending in. And no, this is not the reunion scene. Because of a certain roadblock named Kermit Shogg. As soon as bound books were ready, I got a call from my lawyer, Charlie. You may not remember, but Charlie's the one I called from California to go down the blizzard and buy The Princess Bride from the used book dealer. Anyway, he usually begins with humor, wisdom jokes. Only this time he just says, 'Bill, I think you better get down here.' And before I'm even allowed to say why, he adds, 'Right away, if you can.' Panicked, I zoom down, wondering who could have died. Did I flunk my tax audit? What? His secretary lets me into his office, and Charlie says, 'This is Mr. Shaw, Bill.' And there he is, sitting in the corner, hands on his briefcase, looking exactly like an oily version of Peter Lorre. I really expected him to say, 'Give me the falcon, you monster. I'll be forced to kill you.' The reason he does that weird line is, one, you guys know what an albino is?
Yeah.
It's coming up in the book, so I want to make sure before I forget. That's what an albino is, someone who does not have the coloring to their skin, they've lost the pigmentation. And so there's an albino coming up in it. And anything can be an albino. That's an albino peacock, which are known for being colorful. And so any creature can, in fact, lose it. Oftentimes they don't live long in nature because if you're albino and you're an animal, you don't blend in, and other creatures tend to eat you. Which makes things tough. As a human, other animals don't tend to eat you because you're a human. Then he says Peter Lorre, it's from this old actor from a long, long time ago, 1940s. And he always played the same type of character, who was like the Weasley little guy, who was all like, and so that was what he was talking about there. That's Peter Lorre looking Weasley. Let's see. Mr. Shogg is a lawyer, Charlie goes on. And this next was said underlined. He represents the Morgenstern estate. Who knew? Who could have dreamed such a thing even existed in a state of a man dead at least 1,000,000 years that no one ever heard of? I mean, over here anyway. "Perhaps you'll give me the falcon now," Mr. Shogg said. This line from the most famous movie. Well, that's not true. What he said was, "Perhaps you'd like a few words with your client alone now." And Charlie nodded, and out he went. And once he was gone, I said, "Charlie, my God, I never figured." And he said, "Did Harcourt know?" And I said, "Not that they ever mentioned." And he said, "Ugh," the grunting sound lawyers make when they know they've backed a loser. "What does he want?" I said. "He wants a meeting with Mr. Jovanovich," Charlie answered. Now, William Jovanovich is a pretty busy fellow. But it's amazing when you're confronted with a potential multi-billion-dollar lawsuit, how fast you can wedge in a meeting. So we trooped over. All the Harcourt brass was there. I'm there, Charlie, Mr. Shogg, who had sweat in an igloo, he's so swarthy, is streaming. Harcourt's lawyer started things. We're terribly, terribly sorry, Mr. Shogg. It's an unforgivable oversight, and please accept our sincerest apologies. Mr. Shogg said, that's the beginning, since all you did was defame and ridicule the greatest modern master of Flornese prose, who also happened to be for many years a friend of my family. Then the business head of Harcourt said, all right, how much do you want? Big mistake. Money? Mr. Shogg cried. You think this is petty blackmail that brings us together? Resurrection is the issue, sir. Morgenstern must be undefiled. You will publish the original version. And now look at me. In the unabridged form. I said, I'm done with it, I swear. True, there's just the reunion scene business we printed up, but there's not liable to be a rush on that, so it's all passed as far as I'm concerned. But Mr. Shogg wasn't done with me. You, who dared to defame a master's characters, are going to put your measly words in their mouths? No, sir. No, I say. Come on, it's just a little thing, I said. A couple pages only. Then Mr. Jovanovich started talking softly. Bill, I think we might skip sending out the reunion scene just now, don't you think? I made a nod, and then he turned to Mr. Shogg. All right. We'll print the unabridged version. Do you guys know what unabridged means?
Not changed.
Because abridging is when you have like the shorter version, when you cut sections out. A lot of times you guys will see kids' books like the abridged version of, I don't know, The Count of Monte Cristo or Tom Sawyer. And it's a much shorter version. That's abridged. It means like you're cutting chunks of it out. His version here is the abridged version because chapter 4 cut out big chunks of it. So the deal was, in order to print this copy, the publishing house also had to print the original copy, which was the long version that no one wanted to read. Mr. Jovanovich started talking softly. We'll print the unabridged. You're a man who's interested in immortality for his client, and there aren't as many of you around in publishing as there used to be. You're a gentleman, sir. Thank you, Mr. Shogg. I'd like to think I am, at least on occasion. For the first time, he smiled. We all smiled. Very buddy-buddy now. Then, an addendum from Mr. Shogg. Oh, yes. Your first printing of the unabridged will be 100,000 copies. That's a lot of copies of a book that no one's going to buy. So far, there are 13 lawsuits, only 11 involving me directly. Charlie promises nothing will ever come to court, and that eventually Harcourt will publish the unabridged. But legal maneuvering takes time. The copyright on Morgenstern runs out in early 1978, and all of you who wrote in are having your names put alphabetically on computer. So whichever happens first, the settlement or the year, you'll get your copy. The last I was told, Kermit Shogg was willing to come down on his first printing, provided Harcourt agreed to publish the sequel to The Princess Bride, which hasn't been translated into English yet, much less even published here. The title of the sequel is Buttercup's Baby, S. Morgenstern's glorious examination of courage matched against the depth of the heart. And you have parted at the back of this one where it says Buttercup's Baby. It's the beginning of the sequel. I'd never heard of it, naturally, but there's a PhD candidate in Flornese Lit up at Columbia who's going through it now. I'm kind of interested in what he has to say. The book was written in 1971, I think, even before I existed. And that was the letter they sent out for years. But the thing is, the copyright was supposed to run out in 1978. And then when you wrote in, the letter changed. This was the follow-up letter that came out in 1978. Says, okay, dear reader, I'm really sorry about this, but you know the story that ends, disregard previous wire, letter follows? Well, you've got to disregard the business about the Morgenstern copyright running out in 1978. That was a definite boo-boo, but Mr. Shogg, being Flornese, has trouble naturally with our numbering system. The copyright runs out in 87, not 78. Worse, he died. Mr. Shogg, I mean. Don't ask how you could tell. It was easy. One morning, he just stopped sweating. So there it was. What makes it worse that the whole affair is now in the hands of his kid, named, wait for it, Mandrake Shogg. Mandrake moves with all the verve and speed of a lizard flaked out on a riverbank. The only good thing that's happened up with this whole mess is I finally got a shot at reading Buttercup's Baby. Up at Columbia University, they feel it's definitely superior to The Princess Bride in satirical content. Personally, I don't have the emotional attachment to it, but it's a heck of a story, no question. Give it a look-see when you have a chance. And that was in August 1978. I know, that's all right. I'll still take what you have there. Boink. That is disgusting. No, we'll just plop it
Give it to your daughter. You're never gonna get that
there. Yeah, I'll just have to chew on it. And that was what they sent out all the way up until 1987. And in 1987, they sent out a new letter. And this is the last one. It says, "Dear reader, I apologize. This is getting humiliating. Have you been reading in the papers about the trade problems America is having with Japan? Well, maddening as this may be, since it reflects on the reunion scene, we're also having trade problems with Florin, which, it turns out, is our leading supplier of cadmium, which, it also turns out, NASA is panting for. So all Florence American litigation, which includes the 13 lawsuits, has officially been put on hold. What this means is that the reunion scene, for now, is caught between our need for cadmium and diplomatic relations between the two countries. But at least the movie got made. Mandrake Sherg saw it, and word reached me he even smiled once or twice. Hope springs eternal." That was the last one they sent out. Long story short, the reunion scene cannot be released because of legal issues. All you get is this long letter explaining to you that because of legal problems, they can never actually release it. So you are still robbed of the reunion scene.
You liar, you said that you had it.
I said I have what they sent in to you when you mailed in. I do have what they send out to
You
you.
said yesterday you had it.
Yeah, I have it. When you mail in, this is what they send you for the reunion scene. So technically,
So
it's the reunion scene. Correct.
I see
And
black room on
to this day, he is just sitting somewhere. I'm guessing they have a big old stack of them because they never expected it to be such an issue. I mean, when this book came out, it wasn't very big, but then again, lawsuits are fun. Lawyers. And so because of that, they just sort of had to shelve it, and then ever since that, other issues and things like that has just sort of disappeared and faded into the background and stuff like that. So that is your reunion scene. Coming up, we are close to the end of chapter 5 now. What you're going to have is rodents of unusual size, ROUSs, they're going to be talking about, which are the things that are on here. They're also going to be talking about a fire swamp, which is a swamp that has a bunch of fire in it. And they're also going to have snow sand and stuff like that. And so there's that scene coming up from there. Is it snow sand? What? Yeah, I know that one.
You'll find out.
My next thing I'm going to be going over with you guys will be, I think, Monday. We're going to be talking about chapters 5 and 6 and what happens in those. Tomorrow will be the NWEA. I feel the same way. Once again, things that are beyond my choice that I don't get to have control over. Real quick, because I talked about this with my regular kids. We did this bell work with you guys yesterday, but I don't think we got a chance to really talk about it too much. The whole how I run my classroom thing, I think I only touched on it a wee bit, but if I did, let me know. With what I do in my classroom, I didn't spend as much time with you guys explaining my thinking behind what I do. And the way it is this. Even though it's an advanced class, my 7th grade English is not super challenging. Not compared to 7th grade advanced science, 7th grade advanced math. Because English, I don't have new stuff to introduce to you. You all know what grammar is. It's just a matter of not being so lazy to not go back and look it up. You know what similes and metaphors are and how they work. It's just a matter of not being too lazy to go back and look it up. You know how to read. It's just a matter of going and actually doing it. What I can give you is tougher things to read, longer things to read, but for the most part, English isn't tough when you get to 7th grade. A lot more of what I try to do is teach you guys how to become responsible. Everything I've done in my class is aimed at trying to make you guys become responsible. It's human nature to do the easy, the lazy, and the bad habits. It's what makes us human. Until one of two things stops us. Either, one, we reach a level of maturity where we realize that's not the way we should go. Maturity has nothing to do with age. Eventually it can, but there are 40-year-old men who are less mature than some of you. And there are some of you who are more mature than many parents I see come in. Maturity is just a state of mind. At some point when you realize your actions have repercussions, that's maturity. Some people go their whole life without actually realizing that. So for many of you, is when you reach maturity, is when you stop making those poor choices. The other thing is if you have someone inflict pain or annoyance upon you to get you to stop. That is your parents' job when they see you doing those dumb things. Their job is to move you. Sorry, that's the right thing. I was already thinking about moving you guys. I got excited. Their job is to inflict pain upon you to help you learn from those choices. Everything I do in my class is aimed on inflicting annoyance upon you to help you learn in one way or another. When I sarcastically answer you, it's almost always because you are being lazy and not looking up an answer. Because instead of figuring out what side the bell work's supposed to go on, you're asking me. So I sass you because you're being lazy. When I make you stand, the whole point of that is to annoy you, to help you figure out to make sure that you're supposed to do the thing you're supposed to do. When I send you to my slow kid area, the whole point of that is for you to realize that the next thing you do would get you a detention. My goal is to annoy you. My detentions are supposed to annoy you because you realize the next thing you do is going to be an office referral. It's all based around trying to make you realize that your actions have consequences. The good thing for you is that you guys are advanced. Maturity is in a much higher percentage here than my other class. But don't get me wrong, there's still some immaturity, but that's going to happen. You're 13 years old. You shouldn't be perfect, mature humans yet. You're supposed to still be figuring that out. The other thing, which happens more in my advanced classes than some of my regular classes, is how I run my class, with the idea of the B points and stuff like that. I have kids who show a side of their personality in my class that they don't show in other classes. Whether they become talkative, outgoing, they don't do homework. It's a side that doesn't pop up in other classes. I didn't know what that was for the longest time until I had my 8th graders and high school kids come back to talk to me, and I brought up that conversation with them, and it took them explaining it to me, that because I run a strict system with B points, it allows kids to experience and explore making bad choices without getting a detention. Because you know in my class, I will not give you a detention unless you spend 15 points or unless you go below 5. So those kids who have never experienced talking out loud or being sassy, they get the chance to do that in my room. Those kids who might not have ever felt what it was like to not do homework can experience what it is like in my room. I'm okay with that. It's one of those things I realize is the side effect of how I run my class, because aside from teaching you guys to become mature and responsible, the other big thing I push for is I want you to figure out who you are. 7th grade is about figuring out who you are as a person, discovering as you go into 8th grade what kind of person you're going to be. And I want my room to be that place where you get to figure that out. And it's a conversation I didn't have with you guys yesterday, but it's popped up a lot as I go through and talk about my regular kids, with the ideas of the changes in my room and why I do what I do. And I realized I missed this conversation with you guys yesterday, and I apologize. But there is thinking behind everything I do. I don't always explain it as the year goes along, but there is thinking behind it. Whether it is challenging you to make you more confident, to make you back up your answer, or whether it is making you not be the kid that talks out loud and has to sit there and be quiet at times. It's helping you figure out overall who you're going to be when you get to 8th grade. Because this will be my last time to make that big influence and impression on you. And you have to figure out who you're going to be soon. Because in 8th grade, the teachers are going to change. And they're not going to be as invested, as in your lives as you have this year. And, I mean, talking to Mr. Foley, you'll see it as you go forward from 8th grade to high school. So I've changed how I teach because I want to bring out that side of you. I want to poke the bear to get you to speak up and find that side of you that you don't always put out there. With that, tomorrow in WEA, and then we talk about chapter 6 next week.